The transgenderism usually involves hormone readjustments, okay? Testosterone, estrogen. And so we can imagine a future of sports where you're not contesting men against women, you're contesting people in certain brackets of hormone levels. And why not?
Because it doesn't work.
From separating wrestlers into
In this video, Neil deGrasse Tyson leaves Piers Morgan stunned with a brutal science lesson. Tyson will just go off in the most calm and logical way possible. He's not there to debate, he's just out here breaking things down like it's second nature. And what's wild is Piers actually gives him the space to do it. Like, he pushes back a bit in this debate, but for the most part, he's just letting Tyson cook. So make sure to watch to the end to see how Neil deGrasse Tyson leaves Piers Morgan stunned with a brutal science lesson.
I hesitate to lecture you about science, Professor Neil deGrasse Tyson. I really do. But I'll tell you why not. Because what they've already tried to do this. They've already tried to reduce hormone levels. What it doesn't do, that process, is reduce body mass or strength, which comes from the male biology.
Right. If you went through puberty as a male,
yes,
and then transitioned afterwards, right, then you'll have a bigger, typically bigger, stronger
and that's
body,
where I just think it's unfair. Look, I don't have reflexes. A transphobic bone in my body.
Let's get there. I'm getting there.
I want fairness and equality for trans athletes, but there's a big but here, I think.
I'm working my way up to that. So one possibility, like I said, I'm just making this up on the fly, is you have hormone categories. If that does not solve the problem, or to the extent that it doesn't, then you put in other rules that separate who's competing with whom. Like I said, we do this all the time.
Right.
All right? And by the way, are you going to go to Michael Phelps and say, you're genetically taller, and we have a floppier, I don't know if all of this is true, but some of it is true, you have floppier ankles and webbed fingers, and so we're not going to compete you in this race because you'll have an advantage that other people don't. No, we don't do that, do we? In fact, when you really analyze it, practically every gold medal, record-setting Olympic athlete has some genetic thing going on in them that other people don't have.
They do, but my response, my response to that would be, I think Serena Williams has been on record as saying that she would lose to the top 1,000 male tennis players. So my point being, you could be number 999 best in the world as a male tennis player, and become immediately, if you decided to identify as a woman, the greatest women tennis player of all time. Is that fair? I don't think it is.
Okay, so now watch. So it turns out, and I've done this, but others have done it as well, but I did it for myself to know it. If you look at world records from world-class athletes, let's say track and field, the 100 meters, men are about 10% faster. 200 meters, 10%. It fluctuates, but on average, it's about 10. The marathon, the men do it about 10% faster, okay? And you look at reflexes, it's about 10% faster. Where you have the biggest differences in weightlifting, but for speed and reflexes, it's about 10% faster.
So Piers actually holds back here and makes a point people bring up a lot, which is that testosterone isn't the only thing that matters in sports. Stuff like muscle mass from male puberty doesn't just disappear. And honestly, that's a fair concern here. But Neil just takes that and builds something smarter. He's like, yeah, sure, some advantages stay, but that's true for every elite athlete. Then he just casually drops the idea of using hormone brackets, reflex categories, and whatever that makes it fair. He's not just being ideological, he's actually problem solving in real time.
So if you wanted to find out where the top women's athlete would land among men, you look at serving speeds, for example, because that's how fast you can bring the racket to the ball, and find the point where the women's serving speeds match up with the men's serving speeds, okay? And then that's where you would land in the world rankings. What I will tell you is, people pay to watch sports not for how good the athlete is, they watch sports for how good the contest is. Let's remind ourselves of this. If we only watched sports for the greatest of athletes, you would never watch college football. Never. Because the worst NFL, the National, in the London audience here, National Football League, the worst National Football League team there ever was, could wipe their ass with the best college team there ever was.
Right.
Because everyone in the professions, each one of them was the best in their college. Okay? So, but we love watching college football. Why? Because the contest is equal. and you don't know who's going to win in advance. If you knew who was going to win in advance, you would never watch the sport,
that would be,
even if it was the best.
To bring this bit of the interview to I think, a closure, I would say I get that completely. But the most important thing as a sports fan is you want to get a sense it's a fair playing field. That, I think, is really the crux of it.
So what you do is, in the future, what you would do is, so if the hormone levels categories don't work, then there are other categories, reflex categories, okay? Have people compete in reflex categories. I would love that, okay? Then there are people with pretty slow reflexes. They'll have different strategies and how they would win, and group them together. By the way, in chess tournaments, your chess rating puts you in a category where you only compete with other people in that rating.
That's
you
true.
don't compete against people where you beat them in 10 moves.
That is true.
So we are still at the dawn of how we will or should organize the future of sports in recognition of the gender spectrum. And we just have to put some creativity behind it.
Yep.
I don't see any problem with it. That's why I never wrestled a 120-pound person.
So this is where Neil just kind of levels up the whole conversation. He's not just arguing about who's faster or stronger. He's just showing how across all sports, there's already a natural gap between men and women in speed, reflexes, weightlifting, and all of the other sports there is. But instead of using that gap to exclude people, he just uses it to build a system that includes them. And that's the flip. He's not dodging the differences. He's embracing them to make sports more fair, not less.
In the universe, very few things are discrete in what they are. There's, in almost all cases, a continuum between one kind of object and another. Now, it's hard to have conversations about continua, so you divide it up into as many categories as is sensible, and then you have a way to discuss what's going on in the universe with others. So here we have human beings, where, let's go back to the bio part of this, where you have the chromosomes, X, Y. There's intersex, where one of the chromosomes is doubled up. No one is arguing that. Just give that to the biologists, and you can call that what sex? Is it male sex or female sex? I don't have a problem with that. What I do know is that in the real world, in a free country where, because I remembered some document that said the pursuit of happiness, it seems to me freedom, which is so heavily championed in the West, is accompanied by a pursuit of happiness. Okay. That's foundational to what I'm about to say. So, we all know growing up that in the classroom, every year, there were girls who were a little more tomboyish. In fact, tomboy, who came up with that word? They're really tom girls, right? A tomcat is a boy cat. A tom girl would be a sort of a boy girl, right? I don't know where tomboy came from, but there were tom girls. They didn't wear skirts. They wanted to play in the mud with the boys. We know they existed. There were boys that were slightly effeminate relative to the others. We know they existed. And so, but we had words for them. They were ridiculed, whatever. We live in a time now where people are emboldened to say, you know, today I feel part female and part male. All right? So today, in fact, I will be neutral to you. I will be androgynous. But you know something? If you're trained in this, you got to be A or B, you got to be a boy, you got to be a girl, you know what you're doing? You're taking your inability of your human mind. By the way, this is true for all human minds, because we got to categorize. We always have to categorize, all right? It makes it easier to think about it, but in the end, it's just lazy, all right? So you say, boy or girl, are you a boy or a girl? And then someone is androgynous, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. But just because you feel uncomfortable, does that give you the right to come back to a person who's expressing their freedom of self?
So Tyson wraps this up with a calm but sharp reminder. Nature just isn't black and white. It's full of gray areas everywhere. And forcing people into boxes just because it makes you more comfortable, that's not freedom. It's just control dressed up as tradition. The real issue here is not science, but people not willing to accept change, considering all of us have our own opinions and biases about these problems. And speaking of biases, are you getting tired of getting news from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite? How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, whether it's left, right, or center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get a 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights in media bias and political trends. So stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.